Sup guys, it's me, Balin. Why do I gotta explain this every time? You know who the fuck I am. So, I wanted to give you tips and talk about Podcasting 101. I guess you could say the revenue side of the 101 for podcasting. I will probably make a video if people are interested in a follow-up on how to properly do a podcast, how to understand the proper format, and how to keep people's attention. So, if you do want to see that, you are somebody who wants to understand how podcasting works, leave a comment down below and I'll talk about that. But I want to talk about the money. Where does the money come from? Why is podcasting such a big deal? And why are so many people, in my opinion, missing out on the true revenue potential of podcasting? And by the way, if you guys like the new format, please give me some feedback. I would love to hear about what you guys have to say about how I'm doing things. I'm trying to change my format up, like I said, and sway away from the gaming stuff. I want to make that a minimum focus right now. So if you guys have ever watched an actually established podcast, a great example being like NPR, I know there's Radio Labs, there's the Rhett and Link Good Mythical Morning, or if you've seen Baited Podcast, that's a thing too. So I want to talk about how do you actually earn revenue and why is podcasting, in my opinion, an essential source of revenue. Now, there's a whole lot of different things, but we'll just start off with some of the basic methods on how you can earn revenue, like how you can actually earn a good amount of money. And the very basic one that everybody knows is sponsorship deals. You watch a podcast and they say, oh, this podcast is brought to you by, just for the sake of example, Squarespace. Squarespace, thank you for providing us, sponsoring this episode, and, go use our special code for this web to make your own website or some shit like that. Squarespace, great website platform. I love it. I actually use it personally. So people will talk about it. And the reason they do that is because that essentially means that Squarespace has seen the content they make, or maybe they haven't seen it, and they say, well, we want to provide you income to help promote our platform. So here's $5,000 to go and promote our platform, 4 or 5 times. Now, a sponsorship may be cut and dry like that sometimes, but some sponsorships are very detailed. They have a lot of, ins and outs. For example, what I usually offer when I am actually contacting sponsors, I say, hey, our episode averages are about 600,000 views per video. That's actually the statistic for Baited Podcast. I'll probably throw the graph up right now of how our statistics work, even though I probably shouldn't, but hey. So, just for the sake of example, and these are not legitimate numbers. I swear on my life, these are not legitimate numbers. So I say, hey, we get 1 million views every episode on the Baited Podcast. So our asking price per episode is $10,000. If you want to promote your whatever company or anything on our podcast, you need to spend $10,000 of your dollars to do that. And what happens is we say, okay, well, we will talk about it at the beginning, say, hey, this episode is brought to you by blah, blah. And then maybe again, we'll mention it halfway through the show. I just want to remind everybody that, hey, this podcast is sponsored by blah, blah company. Go check them out and use our special company code or something like that, or podcast code. So essentially, they'll give you a chunk of money. Now, it's not always as cut and dry like that. Some people will say, well, we'll give you the money, but we want you to talk about it on the podcast. And then we also want you to talk about it on Twitter and Facebook, and then mention it in like the comment section. They'll give you a lot of requests and a lot of demands. And sometimes that can actually either make or break a deal. And a lot of people don't know that, is that some people are like, well, okay, well, we'll sponsor you the $10,000, but we want to promote over 4 episodes or something like that. So it can get a little crazy, a little hectic at times. So not all sponsor deals are great. Sometimes they're steals, sometimes they're easy, cut and dry, like, oh, hey, just talk about us once on 1 episode and we're done. But a good thing you want to do to help secure your sponsors, if you are planning on doing this, is that you want to ensure your sponsors of, your quality. So you want to say, okay, well, our average viewership per episode is 600,000, so we'll charge you for a 500,000 view episode, just for the sake of example. And then on top of that, we'll charge you for the 500,000 view mark, but on top of that, we'll also make a non-compete agreement where, like, for 1 month, we agree that we won't find any sponsors that are similar to the services you provide. So essentially, you secure a month of advertising for a cheaper price point than what other people do. And some sponsors love stuff like that. Some people like to know that, okay, well, even though I'm paying for 1 episode to sponsor, I'm actually really getting about 4 episodes worth of continuity for my company to be the only company that's promoted on this podcast for like a certain month period. So some companies like that, some don't really care. It's really good to provide that type of stuff because people really do respect when you approach them in a, much more professional manner. Like I've talked about in my Elgato video, is you got to approach people from a business standpoint. You got to make it even more enticing on their end. Even though, you're charging somebody for 500 million views or maybe 1 million views on that, you're just kind of fluffing up the deal. But at the end of the day, you're getting paid $5, $10, $15,000 to put one advertisement in a video. One advertisement. So it's a really great way, and that's really your bare bones essential way. And a lot of people don't know this, and I feel like you guys should know this information because I always talk about it, making you guys more informed subscribers. Now, that's the most basic form of advertising. That's the basic way you earn money from podcasts, because not only do people who watch podcasts generally watch the whole entire podcast, but they'll stay engaged. And a lot of people are very loyal. Like a great example of what I watch is the Rooster Teeth podcast. So they'll throw like 3 or 4 advertisements in per podcast, and I hear all of those advertisements. And most of the time, because I love Rooster Teeth, I will check out those websites. I love to support new projects or new companies that are willing to sponsor my favorite podcast. It's a great quid pro quo type of deal. So what's the other way to advertise? What's the other way to make money? What's the other way? Well, it's kind of an obvious one, which is YouTube advertisements. There's another website out there called Stitcher. Stitcher actually provides advertisements. You can download an app, and they'll help deliver your podcast alongside with advertisements so that you can earn just basic ad revenue from people clicking on your podcast, Now, granted, this one's not a favored method. It actually pays out the least of all the options, but it's a great way to help you out because you hear about YouTubers all the time like, oh, if you make a video past 10 minutes, then you earn double the revenue, which is not true, but anyway. So imagine if every 5 to 10 minutes you get to insert a YouTube advertisement. So now you have 6 advertisements playing in for 1 hour long podcast, which most people are going to be watching all the way through. So you're earning a lot more income for doing 1 hour of content and keeping people engaged for most of that time. Now, like I said, that's probably the least amount to get paid for doing that type of content. You probably will get paid the least for ad revenue. However, if you do know how to properly strategize it, it actually can be a great source of income. So people who, might be interested in that, keep that in mind. Don't flood your subscribers with advertisements because then they're going to quickly catch on and be like, well, all you're doing this is for the money. You're not doing this for us. You're not making this podcast because you want to. You're doing it so you can earn money. Why should we support that? And a lot of people think like that. So here's one of my favorite platforms. This is one of the ways that I really think that everyone should approach content creation, and that is, I call it the Vessel approach. Even though it's really not Vessel's doing, I call it the Vessel approach. And that is that you should create a system where people who are diehard fans, people who really love the content that you provide, should get early access to the videos you create. That means there's no stopping what people are currently enjoying. That's one of the personal beliefs that I have, is that you're not putting a paywall up. You're not saying, oh, the only way you can get this content is if you pay me money. It's saying that, no, you just get a week or 2 early access for going to Patreon and supporting me on Patreon. Or the big one that I think is a great thing is going to a third-party website and having them create that for you, like Vessel, which unfortunately is going to be shutting down soon. But I think it's a great system in place. You say, hey, for $5 a month or $10 a month, you get 2 weeks early access, and then maybe something else on top of it where it's like, hey, you get to get extra, personal interaction with us. Exchange is a great service for people who are willing to contribute to help support your show. See, that's the great thing there, that a lot of people diss on Patreon, people who use Patreon, but that is that if you create a system where people have a voluntary option to donate some of their money, you should reward them because you're still providing the content absolutely free for anybody, but those who want to help you out and support you should get those benefits. And it's really easy to do. It's a super simple process, and I think more people should, take advantage of this system. My personal belief is that third-party websites will pay you out more, and it's actually a great thing. Like, I know there's a couple of websites, I won't name them just for the sake of, conflicts of interest, but I think, in my opinion, if more people were willing to adopt that style, it would actually end up being way more beneficial, because not only would you get paid more money for producing this show that you're already producing for free, but you would be able to afford essentially paying people to come and be guests on your show, which is growing your podcast exponentially by having guests that you're paying to be on the show. See, there's a difference between asking somebody to be on your show and a difference between paying somebody to be on your show. And if you're paying somebody to be on your show, you're buying the amount of their fan base. You're buying the subscribers that are going to be coming to watch your episode of the podcast. That's a great tip for anybody who's an upcoming podcast producer, or maybe who has a current established fan base. take that as advice. Don't pay yourself. Don't take the money and go, okay, well, now that I've made money, I get to live paycheck to paycheck. No, take that money and reinvest it. Spend the money to hire people who want to come onto your podcast, who want to make it more professional, who want to animate your podcast and bring more people to come watch it. You know, that's a business tactic that I think more people should adopt. Now, there's a couple of other ways to do this, but there's not too much other that really kind of, I guess you could say, delivers the same type of quality. And that is that exclusive and restrictive rights. Some people will make their podcast available specifically only on certain platforms. I don't really like this, but it's a thing that happens. You might find this from time to time with celebrities, but it's a great medium that if a website can essentially buy exclusive rights to your podcast, the website will get more listeners, get more people. But the trade-off is that you might sacrifice that sponsorship spot. You might sacrifice your advertising deals. You might sacrifice being featured on a ton of different websites. So some people who have extremely established fan bases, I'm talking like over 500,000 subscribers, should take this into consideration. Don't do it because I personally don't think it's a great option. But you can go and straight up go like, okay, well, this website's going to pay me $10,000 a month as a minimum to just have me post this over here. And then I tell my YouTube subscribers to go over to this website and do it. The reason I don't suggest this as much is because websites have a tendency to come and go as they, that's just kind of the trend. A website will become very popular instantaneously and then just kind of disappear out of nowhere, as we see right now with Vessel. It was a great startup and people were and creators were flocking to the idea. Not the people, but creators were like, wow, people can pay a couple dollars to get early access. Why wouldn't we do this? But when you put exclusive content into those websites, you're going to find that you have a significant drop-off sometimes of your consumers, and people don't always like that. And it sucks, but it's just kind of the trade-off you have to take. So if you ever do consider that, understand and take a real look at your cost and risk analysis. Like, okay, sure, they might be paying me $10,000, but could I be making more by doing this just on YouTube, just on SoundCloud? Stuff like that will actually really benefit you guys in the long run. And I highly, highly suggest you take a look into that. Now, that's really all the ways you can make money. There are some other little details in there that, I guess you could say are really easy and you can find out for yourself. So if you guys do have any questions or you do actually want to look into starting up your own podcast or how to actually produce a podcast, leave a comment down below. I will answer any questions that I can, and I will actually be linking this to a bunch of my old videos so that more people can see it, because I say this all the time, is that people should be getting paid more for the content that they're already producing for free. And I think it would be great if people started producing podcasts because, number one, the fans want it. People like short videos, yeah, but there are tons of people who want to know more about the lives of their favorite creators. Like a great example I could give would be Casey Neistat. Casey Neistat had his own podcast. Think about how much money he's making right now on YouTube. He could probably triple his income just by starting a podcast. And I think it'd be great. I love all you guys, and I will see you in the next video. And please, leave some comments down below. I've been dying to hear what you guys have to say about my videos as of late. I will see you next time.